The Minding Your Business podcast is brought to you by Brooks Brothers Consulting. Brooks Brothers Consulting is a company that my brother and I started back in 2013, where we provide leadership coaching, development, and strategic business planning for small to mid-sized companies. Currently, we're looking for anyone that's new to their leadership position, whether you're a new manager at a company, you're a new executive, whatever the case is, or you've been in leadership for some time, but you're at a new organization, you've got new expectations and whatnot. Either way, we'd love to work with you, and I would love to work with you directly. So you can visit www.brooksbrothersconsulting.com. That's www.brooksbrothersconsulting.com. Or you can email at info@brooksbrothersconsulting.com. Today's episode is episode 32. We're talking about changing the game through ownership. Change the game through ownership. That's how we're going to do it today. So first, let's go ahead and get the music going. Turn it up.
What we do here is go back.
To the Minding Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Ron Brooks. So glad that you all could join on this Friday, February the 2nd, 2018. Damn, was January not as long as hell? I mean, God, dog. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. January seemed to go by really long. I know there's 31 days and that kind of thing, but man, it just seemed like time just, stood still for a moment. We had so much that went on in January, but it just seemed like a long month. So, man, I'm glad to be here out of January, and now into February. Don't know anything about what the groundhog saw today. Maybe y'all can comment. The folks that are here on Facebook Live can comment and tell us what the groundhog, if y'all keep up with that. Elliot the Man, what's going on? Sherry, how you doing? Mahogany, what's going on, girl? Anthony, Rachel, how y'all doing? Carol, Tytra, Staples, what's going on, Frat? How you doing? So glad that y'all could join on today. Hope you had a marvelous week. It was a very eventful week with a number of different things going on, but nonetheless, we want to jump right in on today's topic. We're at episode 32, man, so we're rolling. Shout out to everybody who has been out to leave positive reviews on Apple Podcast and all the different places where you get podcasts. Thank you so much. We've had some really good shares and reviews and things like that. So I'm extremely excited and very thankful for all of you for your participation and your support on this. Roberto, how you doing? Good afternoon to you. Thank you for tuning in. I love everybody that tunes in and gets a chance to participate. Again, today, episode 32, changing the game through ownership. Change the game through ownership. So I'm going to speak from a perspective of real estate. And one of the things that I want to make sure that is known about this particular podcast that I do and compared to other business podcasts and things like that. And there's some great ones. There's some great ones that I listen to out there. Y'all have heard me talk about Dominic Lawson with the Startup Life. That's definitely one that you should have in your repertoire. in terms of business podcasts, and there's many others. One of the things that's different about what I do compared to what some others is, many of you know me not as an academic, right? So yes, I went to school. I've been formally educated and some things like that, but I'm not the academic, right? So I don't come to you all with a whole lot of theory, right? I come to you with a lot of practicality because I talk about subjects and things that I've actually done, as opposed to the theory of here's how it could work, or here's it with all variables, when you fix all the inputs, this is how it should work. And so rather than just reading books and just telling y'all what y'all already could do through Google and all this kind of stuff, y'all can research all that stuff for yourself. I like to share a lot of best practices and a lot of things that I've actually witnessed, and mostly things I've actually done. So that's a little bit different than what you may get in other areas and it's good to have the academic theories and things like that. That's why we all go to school. But, one of the things that I look to help, entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever it is coming from a place from the heart, authentic, and sharing with you subjects that I know about because I've done it. Or I've been a close by witness. So Yasmin, good afternoon. Julius, Rodney, good afternoon to you. Robin, Danny Forrester, how you doing? Gerald Morgan Jr. These are all the folks, for those that are listening on the podcast, these are the folks that are on Facebook Live. So let's jump right in for changing the game through ownership. So I talked to you about the practicality and things like that. And real estate's kind of a funny game. One of the things that is always going to be with us, that's not really going anywhere as long as we have a planet, is there's going to be land, right? And there's always going to be land dwellers, whether they're human beings or whatever it is, whatever the case may be. So as long as there's land dwellers, there'll be a need for land. And as long as there's outside elements, there's going to be a need for housing. And so the investment in real estate is very critical to what I do and what many people do. And there's always going to be a market, right? One of the things that comes about in real estate is because it's become saturated in some cases. And so there's a lot of people in it, so there's a lot of noise, right? And over the last several years, Mickey Renee, how you doing, sis? What's going on? Glad you could join. One of the things that you start hearing about, or you've heard over the last several years, is the ability to get into real estate with no credit, no cash, and no nothing. You just show up with your ass and you just go get properties and just do whatever. And that's a nice headline. It draws people in and things like that. But there's a lot more to it than that. And that's what I kind of want to get into today. And then what I want to do is tie real estate ownership to the ownership mentality to begin with. And as I've always said on this podcast, y'all, I'm big on definition, right? I'm big on definition. The reason being is we've got to be on the same page, right, when we're talking. It doesn't make sense for, two people to be talking using the same language, but they got different definitions of what they're talking about. That's a wasteful conversation, right? So we got to make sure we define what we're talking about today. But yes, you want to be able to change the game with ownership. You're in the 2018. Again, you've got these great goals and aspirations that many of you have. You've done vision boards and whiteboard sessions and all this kind of thing. One of the things I always talk to people when they look to invest and look to do some different things is you've got to incorporate real estate. You've seen people run ragged with the whole Bitcoin thing, and we're big into getting into what's sensationalized, right? And I've been fortunate to be involved in Bitcoin from an investment standpoint, and having good folks to be able to share with me information. So you have to know how to ride that wave when you're talking about in the stock market and things like that. Real estate's a little different. Real estate is a little more, it's a little more even keeled than watching the stock market. The stock market requires a lot of patience and requires a lot of discipline. Two things that most folk don't have. right? They don't have patience. They don't have discipline. So it's going to be difficult. You can't sit there and hawk it. Like if you have Bitcoin, right? You can't sit there and watch it every 5 minutes and see all the fluctuation. Man, you have a heart attack. If you sit up there, and we're going to have Reginald Clark, my financial advisor, on next week, and we're going to talk about some of this. But with the stock market and things like that, sure, you can make good money. You can lose money. Again, you're taking the risk. One of the things that you've got, whether it's Bitcoin or whatever it is you've got to have, again, that discipline to be able to not sit there and hawk it, because you're looking at it over a long term. So investing is a long-term strategy, which gets me into the ownership mentality. So we talked about defining. One of the things that you have to be able to do to transition, and these are things that many of you with children and things like that, children in your family, nieces, nephews, that kind of thing, you should really look into when you start talking about the ownership mentality. You can have an ownership mentality that's just a part of you. It's ingrained in you. Doesn't matter if you're working a job. Doesn't matter if you're a business owner or you're both, right? You can have and incorporate and embody a ownership mentality. So, what is the ownership mentality? And this is the first thing. Before you go investing in the real estate, before you go to anything where you're going to have ownership, you've got to have the mentality of ownership, right? Because if you don't have the mentality, what you're going to do is you're already setting yourself up to fail. So you have to be honest with yourself. And you got to be honest with your family, honest with your children, your business partners, whoever. You got to have the ownership mentality, which is you've got to be willing to take a level of risk to be able to evolve yourself, evolve your bloodline, right? That's what owners do. Owners take risks. So, this definition may sound a lot like an entrepreneur, but in any kind of ownership, you take the risk. If I own this phone, free and clear, and it's worth $800 or whatever, I take the ownership of that, right? So I also take the risk of whatever happens with it or whatever is done with it, right? A lot of people don't like that. Some people don't like to take on the responsibility of being an owner, right? They want the glory of it. They want the nice Facebook post that people like and share. They want to bask in the fruits of it. But ownership is a lot of work. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes into it. Most folks don't post the behind the scenes stuff. They just post when they're selling a house and they got the sold sign and there's a check, right? And that's become big over the last couple of years as everybody do the photo ops and put it on here for Facebook and social media with the check and all that kind of thing. And now they've gotten to the point now where they don't even blot out the routing number and the damn account number on the check. They just take a picture of the damn check, just put it out there. They ain't worried about nobody doing nothing with it no more. So it's just the evolution. But so ownership. So you've got to be willing to take on the responsibility in being an owner. And the responsibility is you're willing to take on not just the great things that can occur from it, but the risk, the downside of it as well. And there is a downside. That's why everybody's not doing it. If it was all just upside, you always hear that all the time. It's cliche, but it's one of those things where if it was so easy and there was no downside, everybody would be doing it. Everybody's going to do something where there's no downside. If you just say, hey, y'all go to 1000 Poplar, and there's going to be, for everybody that shows up, there's going to be $1,000 just laying down right there. Or there's going to be this pill that's going to give you great health and you'll never get sick for the rest of your life. All you got to do is go down there and get it. Right? Now, even that, you still got to have folks that go to, have an issue getting down there to get it. But nonetheless, if that's all it takes, the barrier to entry is so low that you just go show up and you're just going to do it, right? So, ownership is not simply that easy. It's not just showing up and getting it. There's some work that has to be done, and you have to be willing. The next part of defining ownership is uncomfortable. Okay? So ownership is uncomfortable. Okay? The first business that I owned, the first real business that I owned, was a consignment store in Midtown. And it was called Minding Your Business. And I've talked about it on this podcast. I took on the risk. I had the financial risk of a building that I acquired. I had the risk of inventory, of all these things. And there's work. I've hired people that some worked out, some did not work out, all these kind of things. So I've actually done it. So I'm not talking about something that I read. I'm talking about things that I've done or that I've seen done. And so, when I first was doing that, that was my kind of first taste into kind of a real hardcore ownership where I'm setting up a business account. I've got tax ID. I've done all the legwork stuff, the website and the blah, 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 blah. But now I got a storefront and now I'm open for business. All right. And it was scary. I recall, man, that very first day that we opened the store, shout out to my family, Cleo. We were there, man, the very first day, man, and that was scary. That was scary, man. It was no duck work at all. That was scary. Mainly because, I'm opening the door and of course don't nobody walk right in, right? It takes time to kind of build that. So the patience, the ability to delay some of the gratification, because there's no instant gratification in ownership. It all takes time. And so I wanted to be able to say these things so that you can begin thinking of the kind of the long-term prognosis of ownership, right? And having the ownership mentality and defining that. And so now that we've kind of, defined it, let's get into, from looking at it from a real estate standpoint. So I get people that, I'm not as flamboyant as some other people. Everybody's got their own style and their own personality, right? I'm a little bit more kind of even keeled. I'm a little bit more kind of cool breeze with mine. I'm not one to get out there and be, all too flaggy. You see how, for those that see me on Facebook Live, hey, I'm not the flashy guy like that, or the flashy lady or whoever. And everybody's, again, got their own way of doing things. But when it comes to things like, getting into real estate, and we talked about the definition, one of the things that you got to look at within the definition is you got to be prepared to take the risk. There's nothing in real estate that's going to say, you're just going to get this house and the folk just go pay you on time and, it's going to be all good, right? You're going to have these great, if you're going to, rent houses, it's just going to be this great stream of every year or two. You're going to get these great tenants in. They're not going to do nothing. It's just going to be whatever. All you got to do is just collect your money, right? It doesn't work that way because guess what? The house still requires maintenance. You still got to be able to acquire the house. You still got to be able to uncover and get the right tenants and things like that. And then you get these folks now, that, they hear these terms and, they think Section 8 is just the savior because, the government's just going to, just give me the money and, they guarantee it no matter what the folks do. And that's the overarching simplistic, almost remedial kind of mindset as it relates to Section 8. But I want to talk about that a little bit more in a second because it's not just that simple. Nothing's that simple with the government. Y'all know that. So it ain't that simple where you just go get a house and just show up and just get Section 8 on it and then just make a bunch of money. So part of ownership is, again, a delayed gratification. You're not just going to go out, folks, and just make a bunch of money just right off the bat. There's some instances where you might. And you will. I've had that happen. I acquired a property in Orange Mound over off of Dallas Street. And this has been a few years ago. And I did very well in it, mainly because it was a property that had, given even for the area, had been very well maintained, had been owner occupied for some time. And so I was able to acquire it at a very good rate. And there was a buyer in the area, a gentleman, I'm not going to say his name on the podcast, but really good gentleman is doing some great things that came in. And even after I had been renting it for some time, he came in and was able to purchase it from me. And so I was able to not only make all my money back, but I obviously made a profit from it as well. And so those kind of things can happen. But, that's fairly rare and few and far between. So Section 8's not going to save you. The land bank's not going to save you. The show enough not going to save you. You can acquire cheap from the land bank, and I'm going to talk about that in a second too, because there's some myths out there about the land bank. When I talk about the land bank, for those on the podcast, here in Memphis, we're in the county called Shelby, the Shelby County, and we have the Shelby County Land Bank, and most municipalities have a land bank, which is simply a collection of property, land and physical structures that previous owners or even current owners have either abandoned or they've gotten behind on their tax roll or whatnot. And so the city looks to reacquire those, and they provide the land bank for which they can manage those properties, as well as provide an avenue for other citizens to be able to acquire those properties. Most of those properties end up in, as you could imagine, someone that's abandoned or has not paid taxes in some time or some years. You can imagine that those properties are not in the best condition. And I'll tell you, most of them are tore up from the flow up. I've got one over on Ethel right now that, I mean, we can't even have walk in because the floor is probably going to give out here pretty soon. It's been exposed to the elements that long. So those things aren't going to save you. Section 8's not going to save you. The land bank's not going to save you. And I want to get into those more. But if you're going to get into ownership, you're going to get into real estate ownership, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Which means if you're at work right now, you're sitting in a cubicle, you're a freelancer, whatever it is that you're out here doing, there's no need in entertaining ownership if you're not going to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Meaning that you're going to have to be prepared to take some L's. If you want to play it safe, which is dangerous, by the way, but if you want to play it safe out here, just go to work, and come home. And then the next day, go to work, and then come home. And then go to work and come home. And then you can do that over your whole career, right? And you can play it really safe, and you can invest in the company's 401k or whatever company that you're in. You can invest in their 401k, and you'll have a consistent income and things like that. And nothing wrong with that. That's for some people, that's something that's maybe okay for them. But once you get into ownership, you're going to have to, in order to reap some of the potential rewards that come from that, you got to take the risk. Everything's a risk. Even going to work is a risk, especially in Tennessee. Tennessee's a right to work state. And most people, they don't like to think that way, but you could be let go from your job at any point for just about any reason that's not evolving like a legality or something like that. So that's still a risk, getting up and doing all that. So you're taking risk all the time, right? But if you want to play it safe that way, definitely do that. But once you get into ownership, yes, there's the upside. So the first thing you got to do is be prepared to be uncomfortable, right? There's going to be some things everything's not going to go your way, and it's not going to make your spouse happy all the time. It's not going to make your spouse's mother happy all the time, or your mother happy all the time, and all that. If that's what you're worried about, then you got to play it safe, right? And you can't really get into ownership that way, right? So if those things are really near and dear to the heart, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, MYB, but if they are, then you might have to look at it a little different. You know what I mean? So that's what you got. So once you conquer that, so let's just say, hey, Ron, I'm ready to get into ownership. I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Here's my strategy. Now, again, I'm not giving you theory. I'm giving you here's my strategy, because I tend to look at things from how I target it and what my goal is, right? So what's the mission? I want to own what? Okay, I want to own property. I want to own property where? Okay, if you're in Memphis, what part of town do you want to own property in? So you have to have a knowledge of the demographics in the area, right? So if you're going to go to the land bank, I spoke of that earlier. So Shelby County Land Bank, probably 98% of those properties are going to be in most of South Memphis, most of North Memphis, and most of Orange Mound. Okay? And you can go on there. You can Google Shelby County Land Bank. It'll come up. You can go to the site, and you can actually see they have it plotted on a Google map of where, that's really the best way versus getting the paper form from the office down on Adams Street. The best way to do it is to go online, go to Google it, pull it up, and you can see it and where each property is, and get information on the property by clicking on it and all that kind of thing. And I encourage you to do that. It's a great way to begin investing, particularly when your funds are low. If you want to get into actually the ownership piece of the property, actually having it and the deed in your name or in your business's name, and you either want to rehab it and rent it out, or you want to, what they call, you'll be able to flip the house, which means be able to acquire it and then be able to sell it to another buyer. All can be decent strategies. All do very well. For myself personally, I've done a combination of some wholesale deals where you're basically act as an agent between a buyer and a seller. So in a wholesale deal, you're basically bringing together, you have a buyer who has a need to sell for a slew of different reasons. You have a seller that has a desire to buy, right? And those two oftentimes aren't connected. And so you become the connector then. And so within that, by bringing the two together, so you identify a buyer, you've identified a seller, and by bringing them together, you participate as a middle person within that transaction, because you generally are charging, particularly the buyer is generally being charged some people call it a finder's fee, some people call it a number of different things. That's a good way to invest, particularly when if you don't necessarily have the credit or want to use the credit, or you don't have much money. There's no way you're going to invest in real estate with no money, and at some point your credit is going to come into play. So again, it just doesn't work that way. So when you see the signs that say no money, it's not to say that they're lying, because no can mean a number of different things sometimes to different people when it comes to business. So don't get so caught up in the hype. But one of the things that you can do, one of the things that I did. Now again, y'all know me. I've got wife. I've got 3 daughters, 7, 6, and 5. So I ain't got money just sitting around nowhere, right? I had $3 3 years in a row. Now come on now. But I'm still able to do it. What you have to do, and it's not about what you go to work and make this big salary, or you do this or do that. No, I was involved in real estate when I was making $25,000, $27,000, $30,000 a year. Okay, some time back. So don't get into all the excuses of it. What you've got to do is you've got to look at what you're doing today, and if you're serious about getting into real estate, you've got to look at whether it's a wholesale deal, whether it's maybe you get some land out of the land bank. I've gotten land out of the land bank for $50. $50. That's Shelby County Land Bank now. $50. I've got a lot over. A matter of fact, a lot that I have that I did get for $50 is right over at the corner of Chelsea and Leith in North Memphis, just down from New Chicago. Chelsea and Leith, right? I got a small little lot over there. It's right on Chelsea. It's got Chelsea, 792 Chelsea. It's right there. All right, $50. It's worth about $3,500, somewhere in there, between $3,500 and $4,000. It's about what it appraises for. Got it for $50. Okay, land. All right, ain't making no more land, right? Not on this planet anyway. So there's ways you can get into it, but you've got to be willing to look at what you're doing and be creative. And you can't do it how you see everybody else do it, because you may not have this big line of credit to go do this, and you may not have people to front you money and all those kind of things. But, look at your credit. You got to work on your credit. If you made mistakes with your credit, okay, it's not going to get better by you avoiding it. No different than avoiding the edification of your finances. Avoiding money is not going to give you more. If that's what you're seeking. You're not going to get more of anything by avoiding it. You got to tackle it head on. And you can't be sitting around embarrassed. I'll tell you, as a banker of 16 years, you all would be surprised at some of the folk with bad credit. Now I'm not talking about like people like you and I and all that kind of thing. I'm talking about people who do really well out here. I've seen a whole lot of financial packages in my time. I'm telling you, some of these folks that smile and grin and all that, their stuff's not any better than any of y'all's. Matter of fact, some of y'all are probably in better positions because you may not have as much debt, or or things like that on your credit, or that you have to pay out. So, real estate's a pretty even keel, like I said earlier, kind of thing. Many people can get involved in it. It's not something that you have to have big money. You're going to have some, and you got to be willing to make that investment. Whether it's you're getting some lump sum in some kind of way, whether it's a tax refund or you happen to get an insurance settlement payout or things like that. If your first inclination is just to run out and go spend it and run the Wolf Chase and Collierville Mall and all these places, or whatever malls in your town, for those that are listening on the podcast, if that's your deal, then you're going to kind of miss it. You're going to miss it because you're more concerned about investing in materialistic things, right? Remember, real estate is not just about the property and all that. It's the mentality. It's the mentality that sets you up to be successful. When you watch, sports and things like that, you go watch the Super Bowl this Sunday. You got the Patriots and the Eagles. It's going to be about, you got to come in with the right kind of mentality first before you do anything. Everybody on the field on defense, has been taught how to tackle. Everybody on offense has been taught how to catch the ball, and they know the offense and who's doing what. Who's got the winning mentality walking in the door? Like, yeah, we're gonna win. You know what I mean? We're not here to do anything other than we're here to win, right? And anything else is unacceptable. So until you make that kind of commitment, you're not gonna be able to change the game. With ownership. So we talked about wholesaling with real estate. We talked about, buying and flipping and things like that. Of course, you could become a real estate agent. That's a definitely good, common way to do it. And there's some great agents. Matter of fact, I believe it's next week we're going to have Wayne Moody with Berkshire Hathaway. He's going to be our guest on next week, and we're going to talk about it from an agent perspective. But there's many, many, many great agents here around Memphis and around this country that all do fantastic jobs. And that's, if you're willing to get your study and get your real estate license, Nidra Reddit, I know she's got the school here locally. If you want to check her out, she's got the real estate school. If you want to get your license, that's a great route to go. So property management's another huge route. I was talking with somebody the other day. Many those that own properties and things like that are in dire need of really good property management. So it's something else. If you're looking at it from a business standpoint, maybe you don't necessarily want to get into the investing part of real estate, but you want to kind of be in the industry. Property management is a great way. There's, many investors that I know of myself that are always looking for a good, solid property management. Property manager is someone that is really doing what the title says. Is they help owners be able to properly manage the maintenance and the expense and really the whole edification of a property or a set of properties. And so they become very critical. I'd encourage you all, if you own real estate and you're still out running around town with a pistol going to collect rent, you gotta change the game a little bit on that too. Get you a good property management company. Pay them the money. You're generally going to pay them anywhere from 7 to 10% of whatever the monthly rent is, but it's worth it. I'll tell you a quick story that I did back early on when I owned real estate. I had a property over in Raleigh, and some of y'all, some of the people here on Facebook know this story. I had I was big on, I didn't want to pay a property manager. I wanted to do it myself. No, man, I'm my own man. I can do this myself. I don't need anybody, managing the property for me, and so, man, listen, Marvin's here. What up, my guy Marvin Hassel, doing great things in Dallas, Texas. Yeah, man. I tell you, I had that pistol too. Listen, I'm going to collect rent one night, right? It's a Friday. This lady been dodging me all week. She knows she owe me. She been dodging me all week. So, okay. So here it is, Friday. So Friday probably, and this is during the wintertime. So this is around when, it's getting dark, early. It's getting dark around 5 o'clock. So I go by, I got a pistol, in my back, in my waist. I go by to go, check on the rent. So rent been due for a week. She dodged me. Okay. So I go by the house, right? Naturally, who opened the door? Dude. Old boy. So I asked for her. He said that she ain't here, yada, 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 yada. So, well, I tell him, I said, listen, bro, she's been dodging, my calls, and, I really need to talk to her about a business matter. So this dude goes say, well, man, you could talk to me about that. You don't need to be talking to my woman about no business matter. Yeah. So he want to buff up. Now, this dude, he's sitting in here playing Xbox. He ain't on the lease. He probably ain't paying none. You some of y'all like that. So he's just sitting around the house. He probably been sitting there most of the day. One of them Jodies that some of y'all like. So he want to get in my face, talk to him about something that he's not even on the contract about. He's not on the lease or nothing like that. He just sitting up in there. I didn't know who he was, right? Never seen him before in my life. So he wants to get in, and he wants to start all this, yada, yada, yada. Don't nobody need to be talking to my woman about business. They didn't talk to me and yada, yada, yada. I said, man, listen, tell her to give me a call. You know what I mean? Tell her to give me a call because it's an urgent matter that her and I need to discuss. I don't know who you are. You're not on the lease, bruh. Listen, you and I don't have nothing to talk about. So, but, I figured out right then, right, because I didn't want to have to even show him my pistol. You know what I mean? Because I'm not even trying to be about any of that kind of thing. So, and I had the pistol because, if you're familiar with how things work in many cities, right? You can't just go places at night and not have a way to protect yourself, particularly when something as sensitive as people's homes and money. And you know how people are about their money and that kind of thing, or particularly when they owe money. So anyway, I figured out then, and I have a good brother that is a former AAU basketball teammate of mine that manages my properties now. So shout out to Realty Capital. But I learned back then, y'all, that that's not really the way to go. So I see Marvin laughing, but yeah, Marvin, walking around with that pistol ain't no way to go when you're trying to collect this rent from people. So best thing to do is let the property management company handle that on your behalf, and it's good. It's worth that compensation. I'll tell you that. But so definitely a good best practice is when you do get into real estate, if you're going to hold and rent out property, I encourage you to use property management and use a good property manager. So again, at the end of the day, I encourage you all through these best practices that if you want to get into real estate, get around some folks that are in it, right? So it's just like anything that you want to become good at. You've got to be around people that are doing it and that you admire and that are doing it with integrity and the proper legalities, right? Because there's a lot of people in real estate that are doing it very well and doing it with integrity and with some level of moral compass. And then just like in the industry, there are some folks in it that lack those things that I just mentioned. So you got to have good discernment in that with who you do business with, because there's risk in that too. And so I encourage everybody that get with the type of people that are doing that kind of business, pick their brain, do your research, learn, and learn about creative ways that you can get involved, even with where you are today. Ownership's not one of those things that you just sit and just put off and, well, I'm going to wait until, junior is out of school and I'm going to wait until this and I'm going to wait until that. I'm going to wait until I get to this position on my job and I'm making this kind of money or my business gets to this level. You're always going to be waiting, right? Because, as soon as you accomplish one thing, there's going to be something else. So it's never going to be a perfect climate for you to get involved in real estate, but you got to start early. Like most things, the people that do well in things are the people that start early. You can't show up to the dance late. All the dance partners that you want to dance with will be taken if you show up late. You got to get to the dance early, right? When we were in middle school, right, me and my fellas, we knew if we wanted to dance with a certain girl, we had to get there early, right? You want to get there early because you want to be able to catch her before the other vultures get into the room, right? So you want to go ahead and get there and kind of start putting your flag down. You know what I mean? So people can see like, oh, brother, I got the Ron Brooks flag down right here. So it's the same thing in business and in real estate. You want to get into it early. You don't want to come dragging into it, but it's a great way to either supplement your income or have it be your primary income. But bigger than that is ownership is something that you can pass down, right, to your bloodline. It changes your bloodline. A job doesn't do that. So I'm sorry. None of y'all have jobs that you can pass down because you can't keep them yourself. Right? You have no jurisdiction on your job. Someone high up could tell your manager that tells you, sorry, thanks, but no thanks. You can't pass that on. Even if you stay on the job 100 years, it don't matter. You die, they'll come to your wake, and then next week they'll be interviewing your position if not filling it. And then the beat goes on. Because corporations, at least they're ran well enough, outlive any human being. So your job's just gonna be your job, right? It's the things that it's the ownership, it's the mentality that you share, even within the job. Own a process so that you can share that and be able to leave that for your family. That's the key to it, and that's the thing that we've got to get to in ownership. Is it's not just about owning the real estate so you can flip it and do all these different things that I mentioned earlier. You want to be able to own it such that you can then share that mentality of doing it with your children so that they grow up understanding that. They have to understand the mentality of ownership, whether it's real estate or no matter what it is. David Mack, what's going on? Paprina, how you doing, lady? Good afternoon to you. Vaughn, Leslie Thompson, what's going on? Dennis Price Sr., how you doing? Those are all the folks on Facebook Live. But again, folks, it's about the ownership mentality, and that's how you change the game. Look at anybody on the Forbes list or any of these lists. None of them are employees. None of them. They all have ownership. They may be an employee from the sense of they're the CEO of a large company, and they may not have ownership stake in that company, but they have ancillary businesses along with that. So they may just be the top employee. That's basically what the CEO is. Now, I've talked about this on previous podcasts. CEO is an employee. They report to a board of directors. Now, folks just running around here in the street stuff that want to call themselves CEO because the rapper talks about it and TV talks about it, that's one thing. But a CEO is an employee of an organization. They're also called the president and some different things, but they're a CEO. So they're an employee. The board of directors, the chairman of the board, is who they report to, whoever that is. But train yourself to think in terms of the mentality of ownership, that you want to own your means of production. And at some point, I believe everybody should look at and explore, not that everybody can be an owner and that all the time. That's not what it's about. So I'm not one of these people that's going to down having a job and all that, because the first thing, like I've told y'all, ask any business owner to not sell their product to anybody with a job and see how long they stay a business owner. Right? So, and ask anybody that needs to make a payment to MLG&W what it's like to do that with no money. right? Or these folks that are out here that, they want to promote, ownership and all this kind of stuff, but then they're relying on somebody to go to work and supplement everything for them and their children. So, don't fall for that one either, because at the end of the day, they trying to make their way too, and they're just hoping that this person, a spouse or whoever it is taking care of their end of the bargain. Ownership. You want to own your means of production, and real estate's a great way to do that. I'd love to be able to help you. I'm working with some folks now on being able to get into it. Again, I'm not the get rich quick guy, because you're not. So if you think you're going to get into it, that you're going to go sit on the island for a month and make all this money, no, not going to happen. Not going to happen, folks. The thing is you want to be able to pass down assets, and have them benefit you now and then benefit your family in the future, so that your family bloodline grows. So that means you may not benefit fully from it. And that's where we have to get to as people. Everything is not going to be for your immediate benefit. That's where other cultures have evolved. They know that their actions are going to more than likely be a benefactor for their children's children's children. On down the line. But if you got the mentality of, well, it's got to be about me today, and it's got to be about me tomorrow and me on Sunday and yada, 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 then you're going to miss the mark on that. And then you're going to wake up one day and you're going to wonder, what did you do with that time? So while you have the time today, begin looking at the land bank. Begin looking at different ways that you can get involved if you want to get involved in real estate. And then make sure that you have a mentor or someone else that can help you. I'm the first one to share with you the things that work well, that places where I've stumped my toe. I've had liquidity problems. Okay. No, I didn't have, there's no bag of, look, there's no bag of money anywhere, right? I've had the liquidity problems. I've had the issue where, man, I just don't know. I'm scratching my head and I've got to come up with a strategy, right? Because it ain't just me. Like what I tell you I got earlier. 7, 6, and 5. They all like to eat. They all love shoes. They all love, to do different things, right? And be involved in different things. So daddy's got to deliver, right? And so in delivering, I never want to limit myself at any point in time ever in my life to a W-2 paycheck, because I never want another man to be fully responsible for putting food on my family's table. That's just my mentality. That's might be personal. People may disagree with that. People may like to avoid that because it's true. But I never wanted every piece of bread to come from another man or another woman sitting on some other floor in some building that dictates that for me and my family. So when you say streams of income, or however you want to position it is fine. But you want to get into an ownership stake so that if anything's ever impacted, right, a decision's made on you or around you or whatnot, that you're not just out of the game all of a sudden off of one hit. You know what I mean? So one punch to the chin don't knock you out. But some people, that's okay. They take that what? Risk, right? And they're willing to take that risk. And that's fine. That's fine. But again, I want to be able to help you all get to that next step. I'm here to help. I hope you found some good content out of today. There's so much more in the real estate. There's no way to get it on a podcast. I'd be doing this podcast all damn day if we were to get into every single aspect and nick and cranny about real estate. But just know I'm here to help y'all. I love you. Thank you again for joining on today's podcast. If you want to listen to more episodes of the podcast, you can go to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spreaker, pretty much anywhere now that you can download and listen to podcasts. We're also on Amazon Alexa. So you can just ask Alexa to bring up the Minding Your Business podcast with Ron Brooks, and she's going to do that for you. That's just how nice and sweet Alexa is with Amazon. So thank you so much for those that have joined on Facebook.
What we do here is go
Thank you so much. I really appreciate what y'all do to make your time investment on this show. And we're just going to catch y'all next time. The Minding Your Business podcast comes every Friday around noon Central Time. Join you next week. We're going to have Wayne Moody with Berkshire Hathaway. Thank y'all so much, and peace. Have a great weekend.